fallen prey to this ideology that everyone who's trans acts like this, or everyone who's a trans activist acts like this. It's just not true. It's a small group of very loud and aggressive people who I think might have their hearts in the right place, but aren't really thinking about how their tactics are counterproductive.
So Ana Kasparian on the Young Turks is actually telling trans people to basically shut up. Now, I'm not supporting that, what's going on and everything, but at the same time, you know what? I mean, Ana Kasparian is exposing where those in the community are looking to push what they call as a less confrontational strategy. Now, Ana Kasparian does start off with reading an article and giving context on what's actually happening, and basically, you know what? The she is Ana Kasparian saying that the gay community had patience with people in order to gain acceptance, but with the trans community, they should have had patience. Okay, so I'm not just in any of the communities and everything, but Ana Kasparian also says that the first thing they did was attack a person with the first line out of their mouth. And Ana Kasparian has also often been a staunch opponent of that, forcing people to bend about to your will and everything. And Ana Kasparian has also experienced that one firsthand especially from Democrats. So here is Ana Kasparian on the Young Turks with Cenk Uygur, where Ana Kasparian talks about how those in the trans community are looking to go ahead and put out their new strategy. So before we get into this discussion on Ana Kasparian and other topics, be sure to smash the like button in the video and be sure to share the video far across social media. Let's go ahead and get right into it.
Polling shows that Americans actually seem to be growing less empathetic to the transgender cause. But what's behind it? What's going on here? Well, some activists and movement leaders think that it is due to the transgender movement's confrontational and accusatory approach. And I'm not saying that. This lengthy piece published in the New York Times this week really did delve into it. So on social media in particular, some of you might have seen time and time again, like advocates for the cause being pretty aggressive. And look, it comes from a good place. This is just about the tactics, right? They're aggressively going after anyone they see as like stepping out of line, saying anything that might be deemed insensitive toward the trans community. For example, after a Democratic congressman defended parents who expressed concern about transgender athletes competing against their young daughters, a local party official and ally compared him to a Nazi cooperator. Okay, and a group called Neighbors Against Hate organized a protest outside his office. But look, the example that was detailed in this piece that really bothered me is the one I'm about to detail. Okay, so last week, as we all know, Nancy Mace, and she's continued it like this week. Like she's engaging in this really disgusting harassment campaign against an incoming transgender member of Congress, first openly transgender member of Congress to, serve in the House. And her name is Sarah McBride. And just preemptively off right after the election where Trump proved to be successful, partly because of airing an ad about Democrats' support for transgender people, you have Nancy Mace try to capitalize on that, try to kind of piggyback off of that. And that's why I believe she's been attacking Sarah McBride pretty aggressively. But you would think the transgender community, or at least the activists, would support Sarah McBride and want to protect her, but that unfortunately has not been the case. In fact, they are saying that she is a voice for her constituents rather than a voice for the transgender movement. And then they accused her of capitulating to the right. She has done no such thing at all. Okay, the fact that now she's getting this kind of hate from activists really upsets me. But look, that kind of strategy also doesn't really seem to be working. It's actually been pretty counterproductive for the transgender community. More than 24 red states now limit access to transition medical treatment. And public opinion is actually trending in the opposite direction that these advocates were pushing for. Fewer Americans today than 2 years ago say they support allowing children to undergo gender transition treatment, according to the Public Religion Research Institute. I will say the Public Religion Research Institute very clearly would have a bias. So I would take their data with some grain of salt. But nonetheless, you kind of see it when it comes to public opinion. So I remember in 2016, when Republicans were trying to make the bathroom issue a big deal, the majority of Americans weren't buying it. The majority of
So basically, what Ana Kasparian is stating is that those in the trans community, they want to force people to go ahead and bow to that woke ideology, as well as accept it, and be all about tolerance and everything. But fact of the matter is, it's just these individuals in the community and everything. It's like they don't understand that people don't really care about what kind of ideology that they're putting out there. They care more about basically sticking to what they want to believe in and not being forced to believe something and stuff they either don't know anything about or they may disagree with. So Anna Kasparian is a good example of that, but at the same time, it's like they're actually defeating their own cause because of the fact of the matter is their response that people to what people are telling them or giving them and everything, it's like it's apparently it's never good enough to these people. So yeah, basically that's what we have at this particular time. We've seen it for years, if not almost over a decade, where basically they claim to want equality, but they want to force it on people and stuff because they think that they're every kind of isophobe in a book. And the fact of the matter remains is that when you do that, you're not going to really win over any supporters or audience and everything, but you're just going to have people who disagree with you or simply don't want anything to do with you or your cause.
Americans are like, let's just stop harassing transgender people. It's the bathroom. Like, there's stalls. Everything's going to be okay. I do think it gets a little tricky though when it comes to other, gender segregated or segregated spaces like a women's locker room and all of that. I don't want to get into the details, but like when it comes to the bathroom, most Americans were on the side of allowing transgender people to use the bathroom that they identify with.
I don't really know about most Americans, but it's interesting to see how there's like a lot of people out there who don't want to go ahead and fall into this particular ideology where they actually are being forced to try to accept someone for what they want to identify with or who they believe they are. So this is where Anna Kasparian may be good at, but should may have to go ahead and expound further on that. I wish she could, but unfortunately may not be able to do that.
Reasonable. We should be talking about the 7-year-old who just wants to play soccer with her friends. And look, this is the critical takeaway from the piece. Advocates say that their research had found that the most effective messaging takes into account that most Americans do not know a lot about life as a transgender person and reinforce the basic idea that transgender people want what everyone else wants: fairness, respect, and love. Now, obviously, not everyone agrees, but before we get to that, curious what you think, Was.
It's really interesting cuz I think it's a test case for when a movement when it comes to LGBTQ just over time just like accumulated a lot of wins and felt like a lot of progress. I think it got to the trans stuff and the messaging and the aims became a little bit more aggressive because there was like, all right, we kind of won all of these victories, right? And I think what we're seeing is a sort of retrenchment from that. I want to say first of all, just like on this and many issues, like my principles are kind of the same. Like, I don't think you should be able to deny a trans person a job, a way to work because they're trans. You can't deny them housing because they're trans. You can't deny them health care because they're trans. Like, this is just, these are the basic pillars of civil rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, on an issue like trans people in sports, when like basically 70% of the country are like, well, we already separate women and men's sports already. How am I a crazy person for thinking we should just keep it that way even for trans people? Like,
Because of the fact of the matter is goes against the democratic narrative and stuff, and that's something that they don't even want to accept or don't want to talk about because the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter like how you feel about it if it actually goes against the narrative that they're trying to put out there. that's when they're gonna go ahead try to silence you and have you censored or possibly even worse, be physically harmed.
The other side of a 70+% issue, if your answer to that is like that 70% of the population are complete crazy scumbag idiots who I need to
Hmm.
berate at every turn, you're just going about this all wrong. I will never tire of saying that.
Yeah, and look, let's remember how the gay community won over the hearts and minds of Americans. It took a tremendous amount of patience. It
I'll be honest with you. I don't think it actually they won over the American community or the American society and everything. I think it was just forced down their throats. To be honest with you, and that's something that Anna Kasparian may not understand or refuse to acknowledge. But when she meets like people who are either independent, Anna Kasparian is gonna learn that they disagree with how they were treated and stuff, as well as how they're bashed by those who are within that community and stuff where they were just basically silenced at all turns. And these are people who are usually tolerant and stuff, as well as those who are acceptable. But if you find any kind of independent who may disagree with that particular lifestyle and everything, be sure to expect there's some pushback, as well as be sure to go ahead and try to like find more agreements than disagreements and stuff to stick to, so that way things flow much better. So let's go ahead and get back into this Anna Kasparian discussion.
took, like almost like a public education campaign so people could actually familiarize themselves with gay people in this country. But more importantly, they made an effort to like make clear like we're not a threat, we're just like everyone else. So I think that the patience is a difficult thing to have. I am an impatient person. And when I feel that I've been wronged or in whatever way discriminated against, whether it's because I'm a woman or whatever reason, you do feel that urge, that instinct to get defensive, to lash out. But you have to kind of think about what the bigger picture is and how this is really a persuasion campaign. And when your first line is to attack the person who isn't fully on board immediately, well, then you've just lost someone who might have actually been receptive if you were willing to just pause for a minute, take a breath if you need to, but come back and try a different way of getting that individual to understand where you're coming from. And that takes a lot of work. It's very difficult. But I do think
Here's the thing. Tolerance is actually for them is actually indoctrination. Persuading them for them is actually indoctrination. People don't want to be indoctrinated into like a lot of stuff they disagree with, and that's where they go ahead and lose people where there's resistance that's come along and stuff. Because some fact of the matter is you're trying to force them to go ahead and agree with you and stuff, rather than just letting bygones be bygones and just simply agree to disagree. But the fact of the matter is that just like the rest of the people who are on the left, those who are in these communities are actually losing supporters, as well as not gaining new supporters, because the fact of the matter is people have waken up and then started seeing the truth where it's happening with them and stuff, and they hate the way they're being treated by those who claim to be preaching tolerance.
look, here's the problem though. This is the problem I had with the piece. And I think this is a problem that the Democratic Party has overall with every social issue. I don't think that the majority of transgender activists or transgender people behave like this. I don't think the majority of them are aggressive or combative. I have a friend who's transgender. She is not like this at all. And in fact, she can't stand that like this is the way, people think of trans activists. It's a small group of very loud people and they get all the attention. And they really need to consider how the movement at large feels about the tactics they're deploying. Because it's not just about making people who aren't on board feel comfortable, it's about winning. And if they're deploying tactics that lead to losing, well, then the movement overall is obviously going to be upset about that. And so I think more patience, more coordination, but also for those who have fallen prey to this ideology that everyone who's trans acts like this or everyone who's a trans activist acts like this, it's just not true. It's a small group of very loud and aggressive people who I think might have their hearts in the right place, but aren't really thinking about how their tactics are counterproductive.
I don't know about all of that. If there's like a small group of people who would allow this, I think the group of people are basically it's there's a large number and everything, but the population itself is small. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of people, whenever they see that they're being targeted or attacked and stuff by people from these communities, that's when they go ahead and resist and ignore them, as well as keep their distance from them. Because some fact of the matter is that people like Ana Kasparian, they mean well and they understand that people have a disagreement and stuff, but I'm glad to see Ana Kasparian speaking out against them, as well as the ideology of trying to like force people to conform and everything. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, be sure to include any additional thoughts you might have on this particular topic. If you enjoyed what we're sharing in this video, go ahead, smash the like button, and share the video far wide across social media. And if you haven't done so already, enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, click the bell notifications, so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.